ahead and call this meeting to order.
Yeah, we're.
It's sponsored by the NCWU, but we also have a patriot in your midst too, with Jerry Shield, who serves as the executive for the North Carolina Fisheries Association. Just to give you a little quick background, you know what we've been up against for the past 5 years, but it's been really about 20 years coming. Willie Etheridge, sitting in the back there, told me one time, the first time I went to a meeting regarding, I was always either straight up commercial fisherman, long lining, sea bass potting, bottom fishing, and then I got to the point where I was charter boat fishing in the summertime, and I always went back to commercial fishing in the wintertime. And I went to a meeting regarding sharks. We used to have a very viable large shark fishery here in North Carolina that we subsequently, as we know, has basically gone away. And at this meeting, Willie looked at me and he said, you better pay attention to what's going on here. He said, because the things that are affecting the straight commercial fishermen are going to leapfrog very quickly into the charter headboat fishery, and then are going to go past that into the recreational fishery. I took it to heart, started involving myself in more and more meetings, and now I am president of the North Carolina Watermen United. It was basically an organization that was started by charter boat fishermen that were very concerned about the saltwater fishing license. And you could hear all the reasons for a saltwater fishing license, but the real reason is that a saltwater fishing license was going to impact access and was going to impact people's opportunity to go fishing. As commercial fishermen, each and every one of us have seen that. We have seen how every regulation that comes down and every restriction that comes down, it impacts your opportunity and it impacts your ability to access resources which are not threatened, not concerned. We look merely to the dog fishery. You know, years ago, many people were kind of pushed into going after dogfish because dogfish was an underutilized species. Well, just as quickly as the fishery got established, cutting houses got geared up for it, people started making money at it, the next thing we know, it was, boom, shut down. We've seen that in successive fisheries that we've been involved in, be it speckled trout, be it flounder, be it, like I said, in the ocean, large coastal sharks. We've seen it with fatbacks, menhaden. We've seen the impacts on 100-foot steel hull boats, and we've seen the impact on 16-foot skips. And they're basically businesses that you have to set yourself up. You don't just jump into a fishery. You have to establish yourself, and you have to gear up to get involved in the fishery. One of the big problems, and I love looking around at the fact that I've had to introduce myself to a lot of people, many of whom I have not seen. But we have started making an impact because we have joined together. Because as different people talk to different people, they realize that, hey, you know what, I'm not by myself. You know, the nights that you sit there and roll around in bed wondering what in the world you're going to do next when you've just been shut out of a fishery, it's not unique to you. It's unique to every one of us. And every single one of us joining together and reaching outside of just your fishing family to the people, whether it's somebody that you buy a truck from, whether it's somebody you buy net from, somebody you buy fuel from, somebody that you buy groceries from. All of those things impact our local community, and they affect us directly, and it affects a lot of other people. You might say indirectly, but it affects them directly too. And there's a lot of places. There's you know, Wanchese might be unique in the fact that there's, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fish houses that are buying fish. But each and every fish house that buys fish from a fishing family is important to this state. And it's important to your children. It's important to the person that you're married to. It's important to all of the other people that are associated with that. We've been saying that for a long period of time, and back when a lot of this really restrictive regulation came down, a lot of people didn't really want to acknowledge it. They didn't want to step up in public and say, hey, you know what, you're right. They wanted to meet you around the corner of the building, pat you on the back and say, hey, keep it up, you're doing a good job. I'm right there for you. But as you well know, when it finally affects the bottom dollar, when it finally affects your pocketbook, then you start taking notice. And that's where we are. We tried a lot of different ways. We tried to do it indirectly. We tried to wage war with those people who are feel free to promulgate lies, complete lies, by people who want to put fishermen down as, you know, secondary citizens, as non-contributors, as anything other than what we are, is the bedrock of our communities. And that's what we are, that's what we've always been. Seafood was the #1 export of this country. It allowed this country to be founded. It continues to provide the highest source of protein of any other protein source in the world. American fisheries are the most regulated fisheries there are anywhere. And we're dealing with a lot of different things, but the way that you win is to join together. The way that you win, whether you have a personal disagreement with somebody, whether you have a fisheries-related difference with somebody, you know, there's the big boat, there's the small boat. There's somebody who's striking that, and somebody who's circling that, and somebody who's setting that. There's a lot of different things that we disagree on because of our personal choice. But ultimately, if we don't join together and we're not like that hand in that glove to fight this, then we've got nothing. You can stand together and fight, or you can fall alone. And that's where we are. Anyway, I appreciate Nicole Revels being here. She has been an activist with us in a number of different videos that have gotten out to the average person, the consumer. And that's who we ultimately provide for. Whether you're charter fishing, providing for the consumer that knows nothing about fishing, or whether you're the commercial fishing family that provides fish for somebody who isn't really, they're not really interested in fishing. They don't want to catch their own fish, don't have their own boat, but they want to come and they want to take part in eating fish. To me, the greatest crime is the fact that the only thing that you want to offer is an imported fish of very questionable quality at best from some other country. So anyway, we're going to start this meeting off, guys. There's a couple of particular issues. Melba, our executive, who's the backbone, she's our den mother for the NCWU. She has printed out a number of these for y'all to look at. And if you want one, she can send it to you. If not, you can kind of flip through and see. And this is the proposals that we have sent over a number of years to the MFC, culminating in this last MFC meeting. They regard not just commercial issues, not just charter boat, head boat issues, not just recreational issues, but issues of consumers who want our product. And that's where we're going to win, guys. And everybody might not have one of these, but there's not very many people who don't have a computer. And the social media has gotten the word out through people like Nicole to a lot of consumers that are very educated now about what they put in their body. And they have realized that what we provide is the best there is. There is no substitute for what we provide to not just our counties, not just our state, not just our country, but to the world. American fishermen, like American farmers, feed the world. And that's just the ins and outs of it right there. So I'm not willing to sit back. My wife asks me all the time. She says, you know, I don't know how you do it. She said, you don't work for $1. She said, and it's meetings and it's on the phone and it's, you know, I just don't understand how you do it. And you know, the other night when we were sitting down talking about it, I said, honey, there is no other option. There are some things in life that are worth fighting for. To me, this intrinsically is the #1 thing. I'm a man of faith, you know, and I'm a fisherman. And a fisherman is not what I do, a fisherman is what I am. And I feel strongly enough about each and every one of the faces that I see out here, and the ability, as I see these young men up here whom I know, as I see them looking to their future for what they can do. And it's an honorable profession, and it's something that if you're going to put your head down and you're going to grind and you're willing to work, it's something worth fighting for. So, like I said, I appreciate everybody being here. Mikey, where are you? Where's Mikey? Mikey, open us up with a word of prayer.
Father, we thank you for your mercy. God, we thank you for your grace. God, we thank you, God, for the opportunity, God, to be here with these fishermen, God. Father, we need you. God, we can't make it without you. God, you see everybody's here. God, you know what they're going through. God, I ask you to just put your arms around them, God. Let them know you're concerned about everything that touches them, God. God, you see our markets. God, you see the rules and regulation that we're up against. God, give us wisdom and understanding, God. Help us unite, God, together, God, to fight this thing. We'll give you the glory for everything. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Guys, we've got a few things. Everybody's here. I look at Glenn. He deals with the long line issue. I look at Mikey. Of course, everybody's like, oh, he's a big boat guy. He's fighting for his shrimp with bycatch issue. We're fighting for our flounders, bycatch issues. We're dealing with Endangered Species Act. We're dealing with a lot of different things that seemingly are outside of our control. But we saw a spark at the past Marine Fisheries Commission meeting. We have sent this information. We've sent others, but this is basically the summarization of the information that we've been sending for a number of years up to the Marine Fisheries Commission in regards to our stance on particular types of fish. They aren't just unique to commercial fishermen. The average recreational fisherman that you see as you come and go, that waves at you, you know, hey, you know, comes up to you, the guy that you see that's fishing someplace where he's obviously not going to catch what he wants, and you take a time out, you know, after you've gone through a net or something like that, to say, hey, look, you know, there's some grass lumps about a mile down. You know, if you're looking for a speckled trout or you're looking to try to catch a flounder, you get on the edge of that patch of bottom and you go along, wait for the tide, let the tide drift you along, cast up there. We've all had instances of that. The special interest has poisoned the well to the point where many of us look at a lot of other people doing something different than we're doing, and we look at them very questionably. And you can't help but do it. You can't help but look at them going, I wonder if that's the guy who's going to try to take a picture of me, you know, going through a net and catching something I'm not supposed to. You look very, very questionably at the observer that's on your boat that is supposed to be there looking for one thing, and he's got a whole list of things that he's marking down that he's seeing. And it's that distrust that has not helped us pull together. It's the thing that has torn us apart, that has pulled us in many different ways. But as Jerry has come back to the Fisheries Association and the NCWU has joined hands with the Fisheries Association and seen that we do have differences, but the most important part of having a difference with somebody, guys, is discussing the difference with the person that we have a difference with. So that when we come out in public, we know exactly where each other stands, and we're not talking about our differences, we're talking about our similarities. And that's the most important thing that we all need to keep in mind. The particular meeting here, guys, that we've asked for, this is Turtles. This is what I've written down. Turtles. The ITP plan in regards to the Endangered Species Act, and observers that we all know are reality. The sturgeon, which is a new ITP plan that we've looked at, and the observers. Joint Enforcement Authority, which we know just passed with the budget. A lot of people want to herald the fact that, well, there's a verbiage change or not, you know, they have the option to do it, but, you know, we really haven't said they can or they can't. They just have the option to do it. To me, guys, North Carolina is a sovereign state. North Carolina better knows how to manage what's in our fisheries than anybody who works for the federal government. And when we look at the federal government that's closed now 80% of our beaches, they've looked to take 140 extra miles of our beaches that are privately owned as critical nesting habitat for turtles. As we look at the thing that started with the piping plover, that went to the black-capped skimmer, that went to, Lord only knows, you know, a common sparrow now. We look at it, it's a reason not to provide access, not to open it up, not to make it accessible to our visitors, to our vacationers, to our tourists, to us, or to the average recreational fisherman who wants to go down there and catch a fish. And to join the two together, guys, is like trying to put oil and water together. It's like trying to shove two of the same ends of a magnet together. They don't go. They don't work. They don't come together. They stay separate. We've got Jordan here from Senator Bill Cook's office. I saw him somewhere. He's in the back there. Jordan, guys, Senator Bill Cook realized what a particular issue that this was to fishermen. And not just to fishermen, but to patriots, to people who are very serious people in looking at the sovereignty of our state. And the conference process, the conferees that had to get together on the House side and the Senate side had to work out a budget. And that's what lets the state operate. And in doing so, at the 12th hour, by basically 4 different people involved in Raleigh, the non-negotiable part of joint enforcement was put back into the budget bill. And it was passed. And there was a verbiage change which made it more palatable. But this joint enforcement authority, basically, it taps our state officers to write federal tickets. For those of us that work in state waters, our strict commercial fishermen, it really ultimately, other than turtle excluders, it really doesn't ultimately impact you. The people who go outside of state waters, whether you're a drop netter or a longliner, whether you're a recreational fisherman, whether you're a charter headboat fisherman, the potential impact for that is dramatic. And it's not dramatic because I say it's dramatic because you look at the history of how it has worked out in every other state. North Carolina was the last coastal state to adopt joint enforcement. And you look at every other state that has ever done it, and you look at the impact that it's had on everybody who fishes. Everybody who takes part in fishing. And that was our #1 concern in looking at the Joint Enforcement Authority. And the argument that, well, every other state has it, which we all heard from the special interest that fights us tooth and nail every single day, that every other state has it. Well, what's the deal with that? What'd your mom take? Just because somebody jumps off a bridge doesn't mean you need to also? You know, don't you think that the sovereignty of the state of North Carolina is more important than opening ourselves up to the federal government who's come in and has shut 80% of our beaches down? who looks to a federal government that wants 140 miles of private property, a federal government that comes in and wants to hold you under their thumb for a ransom price of about $100,000. It's all the reasons that we shouldn't have joint enforcement that are here. This last Marine Fisheries Commission meeting, guys, this was going to be a reality. And Maddie Lawson stood up and she read a paper that once these senators and representatives really, it filtered down to them the ramification of it, and it was a statement that was written out of Bill Cook's office, that Bill Cook signed, that a number of very important senators signed, a very important number of House representatives signed, saying, you know what? We've looked at this a little bit more clearly, and this doesn't look good to us. Well, that sent the whole Marine Fisheries Commission into a turmoil because they had not seen this letter before. And my thanks to Bill Cook and my thanks to you, Jordan, for your workmanship in putting this together. It shook them because they had not seen it. And there is nothing that comes down that they don't see, that they don't vet, that the Marine Fisheries Commission during their rehearsal process before these meetings, that they don't discuss, that they don't like put on all the different, what can we hear, what can we see, how do we best react to all of this. This was a ground shaker. It was a concussion bomb thrown right into the meeting. And once that concussion bomb kind of settled out, the people who have fought us tooth and nail, and you know, the old square block in a round hole type deal, went to industry and sat down and said, what do you guys want? And at that point in time, industry's kind of looking around. Jerry Shield was a part of the meeting. And they said, we want 7 drums. We want to start our season with 7 drums. The Marine Fisheries Commission had written 5. That was going to be negotiated to 3 drums. They said, we want 7 drums, and we want some more bycatch, and we wanted to open up traditionally when we do it. And it was like, well, I don't know, and it was pointed out to them. And this was a stickler. This is something that I had to deal with this spring with a lot of people as I was crabbing, as I was, you know, peeler potting with my mate, trying to make all the ends meet in the middle. And it was pointed out to me. People came up to me and said, look, you know, y'all's proposal was for us just to quit. No set net, no large mesh set netting, period. We all got together, we discussed it, and we said, look, they're prepared to go out there taking the pictures, taking the video. They're prepared to get drum. This is going to be the jumping off point for us to have drum as a game fish. Said the best thing that we can do is to not set. That was pointed out to Lewis. Hey, look, we got together and volunteered to take our nets out of the water in order not to have a drum issue, not to have a bycatch issue. They gave us 7 drums. It's one of the first. Mikey's been there for forever. I wish Bradley Steimer could be here. It's one of the small victories that we haven't had any of which in a very long period of time. Not only did they give us 7 drum, but they gave us bluefish and they gave us black drum as a bycatch. Speckled trout slipped through the cracks. It fell through the cracks. We're going to work on that to get the speckled trout added to it. But I point this out to you guys because it was Jerry Shield and the North Carolina Fisheries Association. It was the NCWU. It was the people around this room that sat down with me this spring that realized the ramification of the potential loss of drum period. They said, hey, you know what? Guys, we got to take one on the chin. We got to take one on the chin right now, and we've got to have a little bit of faith that come this fall, we'll be able to go back fishing like we want to do. So we got 7 drum. We got bluefish and we got black drum added to the mix as our bycatch issue. We're going to work on speckled trout. We had a couple more, which you'll see here, we had a couple more. Gray trout's going to be an issue. I don't care whether you've been recreational fishing, bottom fishing, I don't care whether you've been drop netting in the ocean. I don't care if you've been dragging in the ocean. And you look and you've got more than 100 pounds. And you've got to do something with them. You've got to get rid of them. It doesn't mean that you're targeting great trout. It means that there's more great trout than there's ever been. The ASMFC is coming up this coming year with their new fishery management plan. At which point in time, I hope that like Jerry did and chartered a bus, went to the ASMFC meeting in which they discussed drum, and ASMFC realized that, hey, you know what? It isn't just North Carolina. Now it's Virginia. It's Maryland. It's New Jersey. It's people in Delaware Bay that are seeing these red drum. So rather than restrict, as the turtle plan forces you to do on the federal level, we need to open it up. We need to be a little bit more agreeable to recreational fishermen, to commercial fishermen, and to charter headboat fishermen to catch some of this, to harvest some of this. We pointed it out with speckled trout in November. Was it November, Melba? Where's Melba?
Yes. Yes.
It was November. We pointed out that there was a preponderance of speckled trout. And you need to open it up. You need to relax the regulation on all fishermen and let them enjoy the fact that they have been very, they took God's adage to procreate to, they took it to heart. And we all know that, I mean, crabbers catch a speckled trout, catch a 15 speckled trout in the course of a day fishing crab pots. Recreational anglers catching 150 in the course of a day. And we push them to open it up before winter killed them. We all know the reality of what happened this past winter. And rather than, with all these speckled trout that are laying there just barely kicking, and rather than open it up for us, in a hard time, there's freeze, you know, there's our normal fisheries weren't reacting. You know, rather than to open it up and allow us to go out there and harvest these fish and take them and sell them, rather than open it up to the average person who wanted some fish to eat, who would love to go out there and get them 100 pounds of fish and clean them and stick them in their freezer, the reaction was to close it down completely and let them wash up on the shore and let the coons and cormorants and gulls and buzzards eat them. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're fighting. So now, the speckled trout issue that we gave them in November has borne out to be true. So, there's some issues, guys, with observers that we all see the reality of. To me, the reality of an observer calling me is the fact that my son or myself stays home. My charter business, it falls off this time of year. I've paid my boat payments and I've paid my house payments the past 3 years by commercial fishing, flounder fishing, in a 17-foot skiff. Joe gets to make fun of me watching me do it, but it's that's the reality of my life. Just like the reality of a lot of your life, if you're not crabbing, if you're not eeling, if you're not small mesh fishing, if you're not large mesh fishing, you might be on the deck of a shrimp boat, you might be doing whatever. But that's the reality, is having options to do it. We're dealing with the observers. NCWU, from the very beginning, our whole focus has been to allow the people who have traditionally done the observations for us in the state, which is the law enforcement officers, the LEOs, the division, the Marine Patrol. They have traditionally covered 13 to 17% documented observer coverage. Y'all know that we don't need but 7 in the large mesh fishery and 1 in the small mesh fishery. Well, if they were doing 13 to 17% historically in this, in our last ITP, then what's the problem with them doing it now? And that's where a major rub comes with a lot of your guys, because the reality, guys, is the man that you see riding around in the skiff is getting paid 90% pay for 100% effort. He's working on a 90% scale for 100% effort. There are 3 different law enforcement entities in our state. There's Wildlife Resources, there's State Parks, and there's Division of Marine Fisheries Enforcement Officers. 2 of those entities, WRC and State Parks, work for 100% pay for 100% effort. The guy that you see every day, and everybody here knows the ones that are in their area because you see them all the time. They're working for 90% pay. The real rub in it is that the majority of the officers in the Division of Marine Fisheries are working, and some of whom are owed up to $30,000 in back pay. Now, how would you like to work on the deck for somebody and somebody owe you $100 that they didn't pay you, that you signed a contract on, that you agreed upon? But $30,000? That's a reality. And now these enforcement officers are going to be expected to take on another load of federal enforcement activity when they're getting 90% pay and they're owed back pay, and now their load has gotten greater by a federal entity, National Marine Fisheries Service, that's telling them they need to be out there checking for federal violations. Doesn't sound very clean. Doesn't sound very neat. It doesn't sound very fair. It doesn't sound like America. So, while the head enforcement officer and the head of the division and a majority of Marine Fisheries Commission members are pushing this joint enforcement authority, you have the man in the boots, the man who has the potential to write you a check, the man who is out there looking at you every day. Rough, he's there rough with you. Calm, he's there calm with you. Working at nighttime, he's there with you. Working at daytime, he's there with you. Working on your kid's birthday, he's there with you. Working on his kid's birthday, he's there with you. So, there's 2 different factions, there's 2 different groups. As all of us are looking at issues, and how in the world does this all doesn't seem fair. The more you look into it, the less fair that you realize that it is. All of us join together. All of us reaching out to the people that we see every day, the people in church, the people in the grocery store, the people that we pay our bills to. The more those people see that, the more they get clued up about the reality of what we deal with. Now, do you think we're going to be treated fairly if the people that are employed by the people that are in charge are not treated fairly? Look at it. Rationalize it. Figure it out. Try to look at the 2 different parts. Our position has been with the NCWU. Put them on a 100% pay scale. Pay them their back pay. Let them do the observations. If in fact there's not enough observation being done, we know. There's Zach, there's Jake, there's a couple different people in here. Where's John Smith? Is he here? There you are, John. If we need some extra observers, bring them on as a part-time deal. We just got closed on the northern part of the Sound when Jacob Boyd issued his little ruling about the observers. We're going to close you down 7 days a week. Not because of turtle interaction, not because of sturgeon interaction, not because of any type of interaction, but the fact that we didn't get the 7% minimum observer coverage. Of all of you guys in here, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? So you're going to be restricted to basically fishing 12 out of 24 hours because somebody failed to do their job. Because the observers who supposedly contacted 1,600 people and only had 30-some phone calls, and that was the percentage that they used in determining to shut us down, that's the reason. We only have 4%, 20 days into a quarter is 3 months. 20 days into a quarter, we were told that we couldn't fish except during nighttime hours, fishing large mesh or small mesh gill net, basically from the bridges up, because somebody failed to do their job. And how many people are in here how many people, I want to see a show of hands, how many people have set a gill net since the 1st of January, basically above the bridges? How many of you have been contacted by an observer prior to the 7-day-a-week shutdown?
One time, that counts.
We had an observer at the landing one day. We asked him if he wanted to ride along, and he would not. He gave us an excuse why he couldn't.
What was he doing at the landing?
Just, I don't know. I guess
He was
not
there.
observing. He was there. We asked him if he wanted to go, and he wouldn't.
In my simple math way, that's a very small percentage of people that have been contacted by an observer. Now, how many people in here have taken an observer? How many people have been contacted since the 7-day-a-week closure? Funny. Direct correlation, isn't it? Since we got the 7-day-a-week closure and we called them up and we said, what's the basis of this? Tell us why this. And they said, well, we can't observe because of weather factors. We can't observe because of refusal. What's the other issue, Andrew?
Lack of designated fishing times.
Lack of designated fishing times. Who here knows that if you set a gill net, that you have to fish it by law once every 24 hours? So, what was the other thing? Running from
Funding issues.
funding issues. Well, that's a funding issue when your law enforcement officers who have been doing the observations for the past 10, 11, 12, 13 years, who have told last September to quit, to cease and desist. And what not very many people understand is that they have to do a minimum 1% observer coverage, 1% observer coverage in order to maintain their credential. So, but none of that has been figured into the equation. So, they're getting 90% pay, they're owed back pay. Now, the potential for them looking at joint enforcement authority is there, and that's a funding issue. I would say that's a real funding issue. When you don't pay somebody and you expect them to work harder for less. That's a funding issue. I don't think it's a funding issue when you look and they just received, I think it's been about a month ago, a new $40,000 GillNet net reel boat to do their like yearly set net deal. The observers are a major contention, guys, with all of us. But the observers are just part of the overall thing. The observers with the ITP, as we now know, they came about because of sturgeon. And this, like I said, this meeting here, and feel free to ask questions anytime. I'm just trying to give you a little background before I let Andrew talk, before I let a couple other people talk here. The sturgeon issue, when it first came out, when National Marine Fisheries Service looked at establishing sturgeon on the endangered species list, the first thing that happened was Virginia and New Jersey jumped up and said, absolutely not. We refuse to do it because our state data shows that there is a greater preponderance of sturgeon than National Marine Fisheries Service says there is. One particular man in Virginia tagged more sturgeon than National Marine Fisheries Service of spawning size. The National Marine Fisheries Service said that there was on the entire East Coast. One man in Virginia. The first thing in the conversation with the division, the first thing that was relayed to me is this is probably the end of large mesh fishing in the state. The sturgeon issue. The turtle issue didn't shut us down. We ended up with an ITP. Kicking, dragging, and screaming. Not before Jean Beasley put her lawsuit in. Not before a lot of our guys, our counterparts in the southern part of the state have been shut down to basically about a month of fishing a year for turtles. But we still have somehow managed to get a little. Not what we should be getting, but a little. When this was relayed to me that the sturgeon issue was going to be the end of large mesh fishing in the state, the first thing I thought about was, well, they didn't get their way with the turtle, and now we're dealing with sturgeon. How many times does it seem like somebody is sitting there trying to formulate something to throw in your way, or roadblock you making the dollar bill? You don't want to be active. I don't want to be active. I don't want to go to a meeting. I just soon never go to another meeting. I don't want to sit there and listen to somebody moving their lips saying nothing. I just don't feel like being a part of it. Because it seems like every time that you go in there and you give a proposal, you give a common sense solution to a problem, it seems like somebody wants to hit you right square in the mouth. About 6 months ago, it all came to a head. And I rolled around and I couldn't sleep and I was filled with rage. I'm talking about serious rage. With people who, and y'all heard me say it tonight when I came in. I said, I love shaking people's hands here because you're shaking a man's hand. You can tell it's a man's hand. I'm tired of going to a meeting shaking a little teeny sweaty hand that I feel like I can squeeze and run out through the cracks in my fingers. Who's telling me what I can't do. When I know, because I see every day. I live it. Y'all live it. We know it. You didn't learn it by doing it for 2 or 3 years. You learned it because you listened to your daddy, and you listened to your granddaddy, and you listened to the old people around you talk about how things work. Things work in cycles. Things roll around. Things, will eventually come about. That's the reason we're not static. That's the reason you can't make it doing one thing. I don't care if you had 5,000 crab pots. You can't make a year's living crabbing. Because there's going to come a year when there's no crabs, or there's so many crabs, they're cheap as dirt. I've got a couple more things to point out. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and then I'm going to ask Jerry Schill if he'll come up here. And then I want to ask a couple of y'all a few pointed questions. We're being recorded here, guys. The recorder keeps you honest. And we asked Nicole to be at the Marine Fisheries Commission meeting, starting with public comment this past Wednesday night. And she recorded the whole thing. And I'm going to tell you the one thing about being recorded by somebody outside is that this particular Marine Fisheries Commission meeting was about as non-contentious. It was about as productive, would you say, Mikey, Jerry? About as productive, about as non-confrontational as we have had. And it's directly related to that right there. This is going to be disseminated, this video, guys, to people who don't know. The uneducated legislators in Raleigh. This coming year, you're going to be looking at game fish. And it's game fish for rock, it's game fish for drum, and it's game fish for speckled trout. That's a reality. It's coming. Hard push for joint enforcement is coming. Melding wildlife resources and the division under wildlife. Wildlife basically taking over the division in-house and handling it is a reality that's going to be coming this long session. That video right there is to point out to all of y'all that you better be prepared. You better be prepared to reach across the aisle to the man to your right and the man to your left to fight. If you think what you do is worth fighting for, then you better be willing to reach across the aisle. You better be willing to go up to the man that you might have a personal difference with, a gear conflict with, something else. And you better be willing to hold his hand. The lawsuit that's coming has a huge potential to put observers on recreational boats, to put observers on fishing piers, and to put observers on charter boats. We've been dealing with the reality for a long time. The NCWU could not join in the lawsuit for the simple fact that our mission statement is to provide open and free access within bounds, with sensible regulation, to all users of the resource. But this lawsuit is going to level the playing field. But I think that if we all look at it as a way to get back at this particular special interest, I think that we're missing what it is. Because this lawsuit ultimately has the possibility of getting our state to join in, to understand, to look at the issues surrounding turtles and sturgeon, to say, you know what, there's a lot more of them, so we need a potential more interaction. As there's more of something, you're going to have more interaction. When there's more croakers, you generally go catch more croakers. Same way with speckled trout, same way with everything else that swims, lives, eats, and breathes in the sounds and oceans that we work in. So as we do that, it's going to be a push, because we've hit the special interest right in the face. And it was a conscious decision that a number of us made. It's either do you fold up? You know, what'd you say, Ralph, at the meeting down there in Moorhead? He said, I feel like raising the white flag. And I said, I can't. I have nothing. I have nothing to show for a lifetime of work raising the white flag. So it's no option to me. So if you feel like your best option is to raise the white flag, time to walk out the meeting is right now in that back corner. If you feel like what you do is worth fighting for, whether you're retired, whether you're just starting, or whether you've been involved in it for half your life, then it's time to educate yourself. It's time to look around, it's time to educate yourself, and it's time to educate the people around you so that they are best prepared to stand beside you on your right and your left when you go forward. Andrew has stepped out. Jerry, while he's out, will you take an opportunity to kind of get us caught up maybe a little bit on what you saw with the meeting and kind of where you see things going? And again, guys, this is Jerry Shield. He's the executive and he is a lobbyist for the North Carolina Fisheries Association. And he's a very good man.
Thanks, Britton. It's good to see everybody this evening. You know, things of, just to give you a little bit of background, I started with NCFA the first time in 1987, and after 18 years, I resigned to pursue some other things. And then my successor resigned, Sean McKeon resigned last fall, and then I've been back since the 1st of March. And there have been a lot of changes that I've noticed. Some of the things that Britton talked about, some things have not changed, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And the things that have not changed is when you go to Raleigh. One of the things that we had problems with before, and have again now, and I don't care if you're talking about what goes on in Raleigh on state issues or Washington, D.C. on federal issues, is if you're a legislator and you know nothing about fishing, which is almost all of them, you get a phone call or a visit from me, then you get a phone call or a visit from somebody that's involved in commercial fishing somewhere else and gives them a message that's 180 degrees different. I'm not saying that one of us was right and one of us was wrong. I'm just saying you're a legislator who knows nothing. Most of them want to do the right thing, whatever the right thing might be. But they don't know what the right thing is because they hear from different groups and they get different messages, so they don't know what to do. In the meantime, our adversaries, and I won't mention their name, but their initials are CCA, they give one message. That one message isn't necessarily what they want from a recreational fishing perspective. It's what they don't want from you. They really don't want, and I'm not talking about recreational fishing, I'm talking about that organization. They really don't want, no matter what they say, they really don't want commercial fishermen to work in the water. So the key, and this is what Britton was talking about, is unity. Is having meetings like this and having sometimes some knockdown, drag-out discussions, but when you go out that door, you have one message. And that's very, very important. The other thing that I've noticed, when I was with NCFA the first time, the only time we went to Raleigh is when we had to. If there was a fisheries bill or something related to fishing in a committee, I'd go to Raleigh and then I'd leave. If that bill made it to the floor of the House or floor of the Senate, then I went back to Raleigh, and as soon as that bill was voted on, well, I left. And I wasn't in Raleigh a heck of a lot. Fighting other battles, going to council meetings, going to ASMFC meetings, going to commission meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, that day unfortunately is gone. The short session started the 15th of May. I was there for every single day except 4. Every day. If it was a meeting about Medicare, I was sitting out there. You can't go to them all. What I'm saying is, most of the days I was there, they weren't talking about fishing. But I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to know that that fishing dude was there. I don't care if they referred to me, I don't care what name they use. They can use Santa Claus, that's kind of cool. Somebody said I'm starting to look like Willie Etheridge, that's okay. Am I starting to act like Willie? Now that might be a problem. It is different, but it's not all bad either. I don't know, guys, but years ago, I don't know that we'd have had a room full of people like this. Do you agree?
Yep.
I mean, I know it's because backs are against the wall, but still, having people here is a good thing. There's some people in here that know this, that when we had board meetings for NCFA, they were only 4 a year and we had trouble getting a quorum. We have monthly meetings now and almost all the whole board's there now. Why? Backs against the wall. Stuff's important. And we have some knockdown, drag out board meetings too. And that's not bad. When you get fish dealers and fishermen, that's one dynamic. But you get gill netters and crab potters and draggers, man, combined with fish dealers, man, you can have just a wonderful time. But yet, we've had, and I'm not saying this out of pride, we've had board meetings that lasted 7 hours. These guys don't get paid for that mess. We've had some really, really intense discussions, but by golly, when we left that door, we were unified. And I'm not saying everybody was smiling from ear to ear either. You know, it's a lot of give and take and people feeling, you know, is this as good as it gets? And it's really frustrating experience. But I'm here to tell you that I think the message, the overall message as to where we're at right now is, I'm not going to say it's good, but it's better. Because we do see that light at the end of the tunnel that Britt mentioned. I think that the fact that the cameras were on the committee, yeah, I think that made a difference. Or maybe it was Colby. Colby's that young fellow. Stand up, Colby. I think Colby had a tremendous influence on this crowd because you're 6, right, Colby?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the Marine Fisheries Commission, we had public comment Wednesday night. That only lasted an hour. We had all day Thursday, and it went way too long Friday. It went to 1 o'clock or so. And Nicole was there, and Colby was right beside her. And I think I heard him say something when he was talking to his dinosaur. But he was there. And for a young man to put up with that, you're a good inspiration, Colby. Thank you. But it was a different kind of a meeting for me anyway, and I've been doing it for a long time. That's not to put a silver lining on it. It's just to try to, you know, somebody said, man, you're optimistic. If you're not optimistic in this mess, you go crazy. But if you're a person of faith, you have to be optimistic. The good Lord works in His own ways. Sometimes what we don't think is right, He knows. I don't know why He wanted me to resign in 2005 and go up north and farm for a while till I ran out of money and come back. I don't know, but that's what I did. And I'm glad to be here again. Really, really, really pleased and proud to go to Raleigh and D.C. representing commercial fishing. I'm a blue-collar guy. I didn't grow up fishing. I grew up milking cows. I know what the difference between an udder and a tit is. Okay, and when we grew up, I never forget the day that my aunt, we were going into Schutt's General Store, and I was just about that high. Your daddy taught you how to milk a cow yet? Yes, ma'am. What do you call those things that you pull on? She said with a gleam on her eye, in her eye, because we were milking by hand. And I said, tits. Now keep in mind, that's not a draw, that's just the way it is. That's the way we talked. My dad was a postmaster. The post office was in our house. The guys came in with their barn boots on, and we had more wizard spray than you can shake a stick at, so Mom could spray it when that made it smell worse because barn smell didn't bother us, but it was the work, the calluses, the wrinkle in the face, the suntans, you know, the calluses. That's, you know, you don't wear gloves when you bale hay, for heaven's sakes. You get blisters and you learn to use, you know, learn to work without them. But that's the message, and it's not just about fishing, guys. It's farming, it's forestry, it's fishing, it's working, it's producing. That's what, tourism is great, but it's what produces things. It's really important. And we just don't produce. It's pretty darn good protein. It's food. And when we talk about game fish, we're not talking about economics. That's what they want you to believe. It's not about economics. It's about a public trust resource that over 90% of the people do not fish in saltwater in this state. Well over 90%. But they own that resource. So how do they own that? How do they get access to that resource? You. Thank you very much. As a good Catholic boy that used to like a lot of seafood on Fridays, we certainly appreciate that. So that's my message too. It's unity. It's very important. I laid there's some trade winds out there. Trade Winds is our official publication. It was stopped for a little bit because of the economics. We're trying to get back off the ground. Keep in mind, Trade Winds goes to our members, but it's also mailed to every legislator. And it's not just mailed to the legislators' Raleigh addresses where it gets buried. We send it to their home addresses. We don't want that. We want them to read that stuff when they're home, somewhat relaxing, so that they can see the message. That's what's very, very important. There's one other particular issue, Britton, that I'd like to mention that was brought up last week at the commission meeting, and I want you to be very cautious when you address it. And a certain individual, a very somewhat large individual on the Marine Fisheries Commission, said we need to define commercial fishermen. Okay, that sounds good. First of all, let me tell you, that particular individual, if he wants you to do something, he has one reason for doing it, and that's to hurt you. Okay? In 1989, the North Carolina Fisheries Association Board of Directors met at a board meeting in Little Washington, and we passed a motion, or the board passed a motion, and I can't remember the exact wording of it, but they defined commercial, they took the position in 1989, the official definition of a commercial fisherman shall be someone who earns 75% or more of his earned income fishing. That's 1989. When I sent out a press release about that, I immediately got phone calls from two legislators. One was Vernon James. One was, I can't think of his name right offhand. But they both represented folks in this area, including Hyde County, and they relayed to me some specific stories with individuals who farmed primarily and whose fishing income made up something like 10%, maybe 15%. But if they lost that, in other words, if the state were to adopt what we wanted them to, in other words, you could not get a fishing license to fish commercially unless you could show that you made 75%. You would decimate those kinds of people. Today it's even worse because a lot of people are supplementing their incomes that way. To the board's credit, the next time that we met and I relayed that information, they rescinded that position. So we never had another position after that to define a commercial fisherman. A commercial fisherman, simply put, is somebody who catches and sells fish. Now politically, I told you what that might do to the Hyde County farmers if they were not able to commercially fish with that income. But politically, can you imagine what that would do to the fishing industry? We are such a minority anyway, and that would even make us more so. So what this group did, what the North Carolina Watermen United has done in forging that relationship with Farm Bureau is crucial. And believe me, I send them emails, or did send when we were in Raleigh. Their lobbyists were there a lot. They knew what I was doing, and we worked together as much as we could. And those kinds of coalitions are extremely important. So, Britton, hand it back over to you. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Jerry. And that is something else that we've done too, guys. I mean, there's a lot of things that we have done, that the Fisheries Association has done, that the NCW has done, and we're kind of both percolating along, but we're very, very aware of what each other is doing. And Farm Bureau took an official position, guys, in major support of fishermen. And what Larry Wooten, who is the head of Farm Bureau for the state of North Carolina, what he told us is that your issues are our issues. And he said, our lobbyists are your lobbyists. And we have not pushed that particular envelope because we knew this was at the end, the culmination of the last long session. And then we knew there was a short session, that's supposed to be budget items. But we knew what was coming for a long session. We knew that it was going to be a fight, probably like we haven't seen before, coming in the long session. And we've been kind of holding that in reserve. But it's that relationship that Jerry told you about that's helped us get here. And it's helped to get the message out to y'all how important all of us working together means. And it means picking your phone up, making a phone call. You know, Barry used to always be one of the ones who was like, he'd get mad, he'd, you know, do it. And he was always there for a meeting. But he's past that now, and he's to the point of, we need to get together. We need to talk about these issues. You know, I was talking to Kevin, and I've been talking to ID, and I've been, you know, and he's been talking to everybody, and we need to get together. We need to talk about these issues. You know, and that's where a lot of us are. There's a natural attrition rate in commercial fishermen, guys, because it's hard on you. It's hard on your body. It's hard work. I still feel like I'm blessed to love to do it, to enjoy to do it, to be able to see what God gives me every single day when I see that sun start to pink on the horizon and come on. And then there's people here, what'd you say, 50 years you've been buying a commercial license?
That's it.
Probably don't work quite as hard as you did when you were 20, do you?
I don't think so.
Huh? But you're still proud of that commercial license,
Yes,
aren't you?
sir.
How long have you had one, dog?
Since I was 6 or 7.
6 or 7. He'd be 56, 57 before he got one. It's important. I'm not going to belabor the point. We're going to talk about observers, guys. And some of you do, some of you don't. Some of you did not see what Boyd Jacob had written in basically the division's defense of observers and of shutting the sound down. It was the same time the proclamation came out about sturgeon. A lot of you did or did not see it, but it forced a flood of phone calls into Boyd Jacob's office, and Boyd Jacob wasn't taking it. And Andrew called me. He said, man, I've called him 15 times. He said, I can't get him to answer the phone. He said, I don't know what to do. I picked my phone up. I was in Smithfield with my little boy playing Babe Ruth baseball, and I sent a text to him. And I said, Boyd, I said, your explanation for shutting us down 20 days into a quarter because you haven't had the observer coverage when our season is supposed to start September the 1st. lends itself to more questions than it does answers. Buddy, my phone, boom, it rang. I mean, just as quick as I laid the phone back down, my phone rang. And it was the head. And the head said, well, boy, Jacob's been out, he's had the flu, hadn't been around to answer phone calls, this, that, and the other thing. You know, but what's on your mind? I said, what's on my mind is that his explanation, anybody who's ever fished a week will be able to ridicule what he has said. We have men who have not been contacted. We have fishermen who have had trip tickets since the first of the year who've not been contacted by observers that are fishing predominantly in this area. Some of whom have not been contacted in 3 or 4 years. Haven't been met at the landing, haven't had a phone call, haven't had anything. And yeah, I was one of the ones who bucked when the observer called me. But he was a nice young man. I sat home, I let my son go. I was a little bit choosy about where I sat. I wasn't going to make him sit there all day long dealing with somebody else in the skiff. You know, I cut down a little bit of yardage and the whole 9 yards. They went out, you know, and the guy, because y'all know what it is, you know, we want to check this one, we want to look at that one. I mean, it's a hindrance. You know, he and I work together and it's seamless. I mean, it's, whew, you pour through 2,000 yards like that. You got an observer on the boat, 800 yards takes you twice as long. But anyway, I took it. And a lot of people, and I wish Mike was here, but Mike said, you know what? He said, we all know who's gill netting. The fish house knows who's gill netting. We need a list. And we need to go down that list. And you're going to have to take one for the team. You're going to have to call up and you're going to have to volunteer to take an observer. And you're going to document it. And you're going to put it on a list. And you're going to have to call them up on speakerphone. You're going to have to record it. You're going to have somebody else in the room. You're going to have to understand that ultimately they might be on another agenda, but you're going to have to use what they say, and you're going to have to make the most of it. So that come the long session, when they try to restrict you, you can say, here it is. Here's our list. Here's who called. Here's when he called. Here's the time. There it is. That's the reality of it. And you go down through the list and you say, hey, it's not my turn. You know, it's Jim's turn, or it's Bill's turn, or it's Ralph's turn. He volunteered. He's prepared. I've got 2 men, or I've got a small skiff, or I've got whatever, but it's not my turn. It's his turn. He volunteered, and he's ready. He's able to accommodate you. But there's things like that, there's smart things like that, guys. Y'all are smart. You're the smartest people there are. Because you're adaptive, quick on your feet. You can change, you can move in a moment's notice. It's what's allowed you to be here. It's why you're not out there doing something else. I think you're concerned. I think you're worried. I'm going to let Andrew tell you a little bit about what we have going on. We have a couple of people here in Wiley. Wiley is a county commissioner for Dare County. I think it is important, guys, that you go to your counties, that you talk to your commissioners. I think that it's important that you go to your finfish committees, that you go to your regional committees, that you talk to your people. It's hard to make all the meetings. But if you get on a first-name basis, they might disagree with you, but if you engage them in conversation about what they're doing, a lot of times you're going to know and you'll get an intuition about what's happening. You'll get an intuition when you start hearing rumbles about mullet fishing. Well, maybe this doesn't have anything to do with mullet fishing. Maybe it has everything to do with circle netting or set netting, or not set netting, or, you know, setting not anchored net like a lot of people have had to do to make a living catching some flounders. Perfectly legal. Perfectly legal. You don't have an anchor, you run it out, you fish it back. You're tending your net. It's full-time attendance. You're doing it. 50 pounds, price of flounder as high as it's ever been. It's a day's pay. So maybe the mullet fishing, maybe the circle net, and restricting it to net no greater than 4 inch or 4 1/4. If you're a mullet fisherman, you've got the phone call about it, and they're questioning you. Well, what's the biggest that you use? You know, well, you know, I mean, bow mullet fishing, 4 inch, 4 1/4 inch, something like that. You know, what could you live with? Oh, yeah, I mean, 4 1/4, nothing, you know, nothing bigger than 4 1/2. I mean, that would be, you know, a bow mullet that big. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with mullet fishing, guys. Maybe it has everything to do with that guy flounder fishing with 500 or 600 or 800 yards of net, is sweeping the shoal, tending his net, not anchored, perfectly legal, making the dollar bill. And the more you get involved and the more you see things like that, the more you'll get an intuition about, you know what, this stinks. Something isn't right about this. Something doesn't look right. Something doesn't feel right. And especially it will be right to you when you show up to the meeting and they point to you and say, well, you were the one who said that, you know, you can make out with 4 1/2 inch. So we're restricting it to 4 1/2 inch for non-set net. Andrew's going to tell you a little bit about the observers. While if you would like to say something, if anybody else would like to answer questions, ask questions, answer questions. John has had a particular, we found out that John is the man that they have based the refusal for observations on. Andrew got a very agitated message from Mr. Chris Batsavage. I don't know if any of y'all have dealt with Chris Batsavage or not. He took a beating at up there at the Dare County complex when he came to when he came to our area to talk about turtles and ITPs and all the rest of it. It kind of went a little bit better for him down south. They beat those guys down so bad that it really wasn't a whole lot of fight left in them. They came up here to us and they got a little something different than they're used to dealing with. But Andrew.
Well, I've said this is all something new to me, not the commercial fishing part, but just being outspoken. I've always just fished for myself. I've commercial fished for 30 years. My dad's commercial fished for 55 years. And kind of got to the point where you get tired of seeing things pulled over your eyes. You see things that aren't true. Things you've seen for that long a period of time, you know that's right. Part of this observer program that took place, especially this year, some of the excuses they gave for not getting us 7% coverage in the spring and the early summer in the Alabama Curry Cut Sounds were totally false. Any way you look at it, totally false. And to start with, I'll just go over the reason. There was basically 5 reasons given that they didn't receive a 7% coverage. First excuse they gave was lack of designated fishing times. All fishermen were required to fish their nets every 24 hours and by noon every day. That's by all means a designated fishing time. If an observer goes there and finds nets, or an officer, an LEO, he is also an observer, licensed observer. If he can't set to that net by noon every day, what's he getting paid for? That's his job. If he's going to leave that net at 11 o'clock and go back in and say the man didn't fish his net, he's not doing his job. Another reason given was insufficient staff resources. Again, you got your LEOs, you have your officers. $1.4 million, only 4 observers in the entire state at that time when I spoke to Mr. Boyd, and they can't have enough people there to observe these nets, can't observe these fishermen? No way. I want to know how $1.4 million can't get enough observers to cover such a small area. How about the entire state was open this whole time? There's no way, it's impossible. You have 4 observers. At the time I spoke to Mr. Boyd, which was, the first time I spoke to him was on, let's see. First time I spoke to Mr. Boyd was on July 24th. And actually I called him 4 times with no answer and no return call. And his response to that the following week was that he had not missed a single phone call and had returned every phone call and had not received a message. Total false. I left him messages every time, would not return my call, didn't want to give nothing. So, again, funding issues. If $1.4 million can't contribute to observe such a small area as Albemarle and Currituck Sound, there's a serious problem in this observer program. $1.4 million should support this entire state to be observed. I don't care how many observers they hire. And they want to put out the amount of money it costs per observation, just don't add up. $1.4 million, I could observe with many a person if I was an observer. Believe that. Another thing they gave was weather conditions. In 2014, in my opinion, and most fishermen here, I would say in 2014 we had less hard southwest winds than any other summer I can remember. Most time in the summertime, you have 2-week periods of southwest winds that blow 25 miles an hour. We didn't have that this summer. You have 2 or 3 days of southwest wind, then it come back light northeast, but then they want to blame weather conditions. Total false. Cannot blame that on weather. Another one, resistance and refusal by fishermen. And I just love this one. It is against the law to refuse any observer if you're fishing largemouth net anywhere in the state of North Carolina year-round. And according to Jacob Boyd, he's the head of the protected species of North Carolina. This is according to him. Not one documented refusal and not one citation written in 2014. So, where's our proof of refusals? Not one documented one. And that was on the 24th of July that he gave me that. And other things that Mr. Boyd, we talked about, which it was really hard to get him to actually talk on the phone, give me any information. I actually spoke to him again on August 14th. And I had asked him how many observers were there employed by the state of North Carolina during the spring and summertime period when this percentage was required. He said there was 4. 4 in the entire state. Actually, and only 3 of those 4 were actually working in Albemarle and Currituck Sound. So you had 3 observers. The lack of the summertime coverage in Albemarle and Currituck Sound was determined only 20 days into a 3-month summertime coverage period. So pretty much, let's say there's 30 days in a month. You have 90 days. Only 20 days had went by into the summertime coverage period, they determined they're not going to get enough coverage. His words to me, exactly on the phone, I don't care how many trips we take in July and August, we cannot make up for that 7% coverage. How did he know that? That's total assumption. You can't assume that stuff. You can't assume. He don't know. At that time, I mean, they could have had 10 observers in that area in July and August. He didn't know. At that time, nobody knew. But still, they say, we're not going to get enough coverage. So, when I spoke to him on the 14th of August, I asked him, I said, so when are you going to get an accurate summertime coverage for this area? I said, because it starts June 1st, runs till August 31st. He didn't even get a chance to answer. That was one of them times he was speechless, couldn't answer anything, so I answered it for him. I said, so really, you're not going to get an accurate coverage percentage until August 31st. But on the 20th of June, you punished these fishermen for soak times, and you didn't even know how much percentage you were going to get. And I said, is it possible that they get over a 7% coverage for the summertime period this summer? No answer, total silence. And I said, so what I'm going by and what I hear from you is absolutely nothing, no answer. I can only assume one thing. They liable to end up with a 15% coverage for this summer. Fishermen are still being punished for soak times. They're doing as they were asked to do, and you're still punishing them. Punishing everybody. Then some of the other things that I just talked to him about, like I said, I called him on the 24th of July. No answer. At the time that I did this, I called him over and over and over, left messages, sent him an email. I read the email that he sent back to Britain. Said that he had not missed a single phone call and did not have a single message all week. And I had blown his phone up and left plenty of messages. Why wouldn't he call me back? Only he can answer that. I mean, that's his problem. Then he finally did return my call 5 days later on July 29th. This is when he told me there was only 3 observers in the Albemarle and Currituck Sound area during the spring. This is when he finally admitted that. At that time, I said, well, how many observers do you have in Albemarle and Currituck Sound at the present time? This was July 29th. I said, how many observers do you have? He said, we have 1. We have 1 observer in the whole area. So let's just say you got 25 fishermen fishing up there, so they're fishing every day. You got 1 observer. What kind of percentage is that? If he goes with somebody every day, what have you got, a 4 or 5% coverage, and they expect a 7%? It's not going to happen. It can't happen. It's totally impossible. He also informed me on this same date, which has been kind of news to me because I haven't been contacted by any. He informed me there was also federal observers that were doing observers in Albemarle and Currituck Sound. I said, well, how many are they? What is their percentage? His response back to me, that has nothing to do with me or nothing to do with this office. Where's that record? Just because the state says that we didn't get but 5% coverage, how do we know how much? How do you know how much the federal got? If he's sitting there telling me that they have federal observers, where's that information? How do we gather that? He's sitting there telling me he basically don't know. Also asked him, was it a violation to refuse an observer while fishing large match net anywhere in the state, statewide, year-round? He said, yes, sir, by all means. You cannot refuse an observer, winter, spring, summer, fall, if you're fishing large match net. Not one citation. Not one. But then again, this permit's come out that everybody's got to have September 1st. Now, after September 1st, if you don't take the observer, they're going to take your permit. Why wasn't there citations written prior to this? I mean, if they're going to go far enough to take your permit for 30 days for the first offense, by all means, there should have been citations written. Not one. You know, his excuse, they were thrown out of court. So that tells me one thing. The Marine Fisheries Commission is passing laws that there is not a judge in this state that will uphold that law they're passing. So how does that work? How can a Marine Fisheries Commission pass laws that if somebody does get a citation, they go to court, and every single one of them is thrown out of court, not a prayer for judgment, not nothing. They're all just thrown completely out of court. Why? No answer. Won't answer nothing. Also, I asked him, I said, aren't the current LEOs, the officers, official observers? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, are they doing the observing too? He said they're only required to do one per week. They're required to do one per week. Who says they can't do 7 per week? If they're out there in their boat, they see 7 people taking nets up, they can do 7 in a week. So what are they doing? They're doing 1 per week, and then they just don't pay no attention to nobody else. It's not right. If they're a licensed observer just like everybody else, I don't care if they see 15 people out there in a week, they should go observe every one of them. They've done it to me. In the past 2 years, they come to me, they follow me, ask me what size net, what depth. Done it to my dad. And you know how many times in the last 2 years I've been contacted by an observer? And most of my fishing is in Pamlico Sound, right where they're most concerned about the turtles. My trip tickets say Pamlico Sound. In 2 years, I've been contacted twice. That's over 200 trip tickets out of Pamlico Sound and get contacted twice. Does that sound like they're doing their job? And the thing is, 5 years ago, they're blowing my phone up. And everybody else's phone up that's fishing those areas. And it don't matter if you were fishing there in the fall, flounder fishing, or you were shad fishing, same thing. But here in the past year or so, all this stuff has come to a halt. The observers are not contacting fishermen the way they used to. I can remember coming to the fish house. They'd be standing there at the fish house waiting for you, asking, are you fishing the next day? Want to, schedule a trip with you, sitting at the boat ramp, whatever. Sometimes I get 3 phone calls in a day. Now I've got 2 phone calls in 2 years. I wonder why that is. Were they instructed not to call people? Everybody's got a right to their own opinion. My opinion, I feel like I have a right. I'm commercial fish, setting nets for 30 years. I've got a right to my own opinion. They don't want that 7% coverage. They're going to do everything they can not to get it. One of the ways they not get the 7% coverage, don't contact the fishermen. Don't be at the fish house. Don't be at the boat ramp. Don't have enough observers. But still, look at that figure, $1.4 million. And we don't have the same number of observers we did 7 or 8, 10 years ago. How much money was provided back then for the observer program, and they were blowing everybody's phone up? There's probably more money now set aside for the observer program than ever before, and less fishermen being contacted.
Where's the money going?
Trucks.
That's another thing. You got observers driving around.
I wanted to talk about that.
You got an observer driving around. I already know his name, and his name's gonna get mentioned right here.
Oh man.
He's driving a F-350 Super Duty 4-door, brand spanking new, $65,000 truck,
Why does he need it?
and the observer program paid for that truck.
He could be
About a
driving.
$30,000 boat they drive.
And then they won't use funding issues that they can't observe people. They better come up with something else.
What about those dirt ones asking to way back?
We have some fishermen right here that I've talked to from Albemarle, Currituck Sound. Fish there all their life, fish there in the spring, summer, fishing there now. Thing is, when I talked to them, when they didn't get the 7% coverage in the spring, what started all this soak time in the northern part of the sounds, they didn't get the coverage. Some of these fishermen are saying they weren't contacted one time from January 1st all the way until the regulation time, and then all of a sudden they're being called. What's the point of that? Why weren't they being called during the spring? And fishermen are definitely cooperating by taking the observers now. They would have definitely cooperated in taking these observers in the spring.
But you're being accused of not cooperating, that's the point.
Yeah.
And another thing they want to put on you, they want to say if an observer calls you and you don't actually phone or you don't return their call, that's a refusal. Well, I can tell you right now, as many friends I got that I go hunting and fishing with, if I didn't return their call every time they called me, I wouldn't have no friends. Everybody's busy. Everybody's doing something. You can't answer your phone every time somebody calls it. You don't return the phone call the instant you get it. You can't. It's wrong for that to be put down as a refusal. That is not refusing to take an observer. By no means. All I'm saying, if they would have done the job that they done years ago on this observer program, would be no issue on those 7% coverage. I mean, you look at back then, I mean, you had your officers doing that. You had the observers sitting at the boat ramps. You had them blowing your phone up. What kind of percentage you have then? I mean, Britain, I mean, we've talked, I mean, what'd you have, like a 12, 13% coverage?
13 to 17% per year.
And now what? Now what do they want to do? Who they want? And they want to blame that on the fishermen? Can't blame that on the fishermen by no means. That is totally out of their hands. And another thing, some things that's happened here since I've contacted these people and asked questions, and I have been just as polite as I can be. Contacted Jacob Boyd when I can get a hold of him and when he returns a phone call. So the last thing I did, I invited him and the observers to attend the meeting tonight. I expected that would be something on their part. They'd want to be here so they can say, well, this is the reason we couldn't do this, or this is why we haven't done that. No, he didn't respond to me one bit. He sent my email invitation to his boss for him to respond to me. And the reason he gave me, no reason not to be here. He said the observers were too busy at 6 p.m. in the afternoon to attend the meeting. I want to know right now, you have to set in Albemarle and Currituck Sound. You can't set till an hour before sunset. You're supposed to have your nets up an hour after sunrise. So at 6 p.m., I won't know what they're observing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's the reason he gave they can't be here?
There couldn't be but two.
I got something to add to that.
And I asked the man, and he said there was only two of them. And he said there had been denials, this, that, and the other, couldn't get up with people. I said, well, if there's only one of you, I don't reckon how you can get up with anybody across the state. There was one representing the southern half and one representing the northern half. There was two observers. Is what the observer told me.
The main problem is going to, and something else is going to arise. When Pamlico Sound does open, which that's another issue that needs discussed. When Pamlico Sound opens and the whole entire state opens, and they only have 4 or 5 observers, it's impossible to get 7% coverage. Can't get it. Totally impossible.
I'd like to throw in there that, I had an observer's number. Actually turned out to be, Southern Mid-Atlantic, federal program. And, he's working on NEPOP. Anyway, he never heard anything about the mention of the meeting tonight or anything else was brought up to him about it. So evidently the word's not getting out that there was going to be a meeting or anything about it. So,
well, I do know there are several. I know every observer, state observer in that area was notified by their boss and recommended not to be here at this meeting.
I got a phone call on the way down here, and that's the exact word
man right
he said.
there.
He said he was advised not to come.
I mean, you can. I mean, some of y'all fishermen from Albemarle and Currituck Sound that this pertains to.
Who's the boss's name?
On the observer program.
Chris,
Who you keep talking about the boss? What's his name?
That is Chris Backsavage is the one in charge.
Thank you.
I think Britton said they based it on 1,600 fishermen trips or 1,600.
1,600 phone calls. 1,600 phone calls, of which they only had, of which only 30, somewhere 33 or 38 phone calls were either answered or returned. And my statement to him was, do you understand that shrimp are higher than they've been in forever? I know a lot of guys that will be flounder fishing that are shrimping. I know a number of the boys around here that have gotten on where a lot of your crews are rotating through scallop boats. They're scalloping. You know, a lot of boys, they saw all of this coming down last year and they got rigged up with some crab pots. You know, that everybody, basically, when we volunteered to shut set netting down, everybody went and did their own thing. There was very few people in the state, except for some of these guys that are up in the upper part of the sound that traditionally have not had the drum issue and traditionally have not had the turtle issue that we do, that are still comfortable fishing. So, anyway, there were 1,600 phone calls made. Supposedly there was only 33 or 38 phone calls that were either answered or returned. And it's like, I mean, I told Andrew, I said, you know how many phone calls I get during the course of a day? And sometimes when I'm busy, if I don't recognize your number, I'll stick it right back in my pocket.
It looks like they need to base their percentage of observations on the active fishermen.
They've got a trip ticket reporting form. I mean, and they said, well, it's only once a month. And I said, well, I don't know about everybody else in the rest of the state, but there's Mr. Benny. How often do you turn yours in, Mr. Benny? Did he leave? He left. Mikey, how often do you turn yours in?
Every week.
Every week. I mean, you know your trip ticket report form, who's fishing, who's catching what, where you're fishing, it's all on the trip ticket. Every one of us have filled them out.
I spoke to numerous fishermen, have some here. I definitely want him to come up here and speak their experience. far as this past spring, that they want to say that fishermen weren't contacted. Definitely want them to have a word and say what went on in their area. That's what it pertains to. I was informed by Jacob Boyd that they used the same call log during the spring as they did the summer. That they called the same number of people, the same number of times. When I've talked to people that has at least 30 trip tickets in the month of June that never got contacted one time from Currituck Sound. But that same fisherman started fishing after the 1st of July. They call him 3 or 4 times a week. The effort was not made by the Observer Program to get the 7% coverage.
So why should our license fee go up to help the Observer Program? And they're not gonna
That's
use
another thing.
And then they're gonna keep sticking it on us, and our license is gonna go up every year.
That's another thing. This increase in the license fee was to totally go for the Observer Program. And then one of the reasons was lack of funds. Our license hadn't gone up before, but this year they did.
What people don't understand, that $1.4 million is not a one-time thing, it's every year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's gonna pile up, the money's just gonna pile up, and I thought it's supposed to be 11 observers, and you're only saying it's 3 or 4, even if it was 11, do the math on it, it's way too much money. If they're buying new trucks for one guy, they're pissing the money away as a
And he's refusing to go observe.
Well, they also got a part-time observer that's driving a Ford F-350 four-door diesel pickup truck.
And I've also spoken to Curtis several times on the phone, and I'm gonna have him come over here and tell you, because he's fished his life up there. He knows, and people he's brought with him knows the same thing. And I'm gonna tell you the observer's name. Jacob Boyd requested me to give this observer's name out. I wouldn't give it to him, because I told him what he said. Wanted the fisherman's name, I said, I'm not giving you that either. Repeatedly he asked me. You know why? Because if he got this person's name, he was going to be fired on the spot because of what he said. This observer told Curtis asked him, why didn't y'all contact us back in the spring like you're contacting us now? His response was, we were told to lay back and not to contact fishermen for a while.
Due to the weather and climate
And that's the
conditions.
exact words I told to Jacob Boyd. His first words out of his mouth, I want the observer's name. I said, you're not getting it. And he was told that he was worried to death about it. And if I send him an email to invite him, he's the one that's really supposed to be in charge. He has told me over and over on the phone in one conversation, if any fisherman in your area or you has a problem with any observer, you contact me, I hire and I fire the observers in the state of North Carolina.
I have a quick question. I think Britton had explained to us a very logical way that we could go and use our own trip tickets to ensure that our fishermen are being observed and contact the observers ourselves. Is that something that we as a community can do? In Wilson, to take these trip tickets and make sure that we're getting our numbers?
Well, see, that's another thing where I was just talking to Curtis. I know that he had called Jacob Boyd himself, and I know of talking to him several times, requesting observers, not even get a return phone call.
I don't want to imagine Jake got it, called you.
And this is something that really happened. This was recent. Well, it's on my mind. This pertains to the Pamlico Sound not opening up on September 1st, as it was issued that all waters were going to be open after September 1st, largemouth net. That's a lie. That's not true. From Morgan Inlet south, the entire Pamlico Sound is going to be shut until after the 15th. And it's been like that for the past 5 years. The first reason that was given that didn't happen was Mr. Daniels didn't get the permit on time for us to be able to fish that. We used to have a special permit to fish that area because of turtle interaction. You had to take an observer if you had the permit and you were fishing that area. All right, this year that permit's totally done away with. We all have to have the same permit to fish the whole entire state with gill nets. They told me the permit there from Pamlico Sound is done away with. I actually have in my pocket, I have a permit that says I can fish statewide as long as I'm fishing gill nets. But then again, that's closed. Then they want to say that's because of turtle interaction for the first part of September. How do they know? It's been closed 5 years. You ain't been able to fish none of that for 5 years. My dad can back that up. He fishes in Pamlico Sound, fishes a lot over Longshore River, down in New Inlet, fish around Rodanthe. Past 5 years, everything else opens. That stays closed until at least the 15th.
They don't know what's going on now.
So they have no record. If they want to issue a number of turtles that were caught from the 1st of September to the 15th, I won't see it. Because there's been no largemouth nets set there.
Hey, I got a question for Jerry. I was wondering if the North Carolina Fishing Association can file lawsuits against individuals rather than going against a state agency like Marine Fisheries, and just put individuals' feet to the fire.
Yeah.
I'm not an attorney, but I don't think so. I doubt it, because the person isn't the one that does it.
It's pretty incriminating to me what they're doing.
But regarding the issue at hand right now with the opening, the division relies on fishermen to tell them when there's when the water's cool a little bit and the turtles move out. And they said it won't open before the 15th, but whenever the turtles move out, then it'll reopen. But it's...
Well, I can say this. I've been strike netting and drop netting in Pamlico Sound the entire summer. I got 100 set nets. I might set at 3 o'clock in the morning. I might set at 9 o'clock at night. Set, take back up on the shoals. I had an observer. His name was Jake. Got his phone number. Called me on the 18th. Asked me, was I fishing in Currituck Sound? I told him no. Told him I was fishing in Pamlico Sound with drop net, strike net, and largemouth net. I said, you're more than welcome to come with me. I said, I don't have any problem with that. He refused me twice. He said, I'm not
open September 1. If you guys know that there's no turtles in a particular area after September 1, let us know, and we'll take it from there.
There's no way to know that. There's turtles everywhere now.
That's what I'm saying. And keep in mind, too, let me say this. Louis Daniel told a group of us last week, we met for lunch on Thursday. Or was it? Yeah, it was Thursday. He'll do whatever we want. If we want to open it all September 1, he'll do that. But keep in mind, you catch a couple of turtles, you're shut down.
Well, I can assure you, there's not any turtles there right now.
It's been shut down for 10 years. I
got a question to that. When the observer on the boat, I asked him a question about the definition of take. He said every turtle that's caught in a net is considered a take.
Absolutely, it is. Now, that's not the observer's fault. This is one thing you guys really need to understand. The Endangered Species Act is running this show. This is not the Magnuson Act. This is not the Fisheries Reform Act. The Endangered Species Act says a take. And you're not allowed to harass an endangered species. What is harassment? When you're looking at the law, everything goes by definition. Not what you and I think the definition is, but what the law says the definition is. If you're on a kayak and you're out in Atlantic Beach, you're some tourist, you see a turtle swimming, you love turtles, so you go paddling over there, you cause that turtle to move the direction he was going, you've harassed that sea turtle. That is a violation of the Endangered Species Act. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what the Observer's saying. That's not what Lewis Daniels saying. That's the Endangered Species Act.
Well, I don't want to take nothing away from anybody. Anybody does make a living. There's a porpoise an endangered species.
They're marine. That's under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. That's even tougher.
All right, you got folks out here every evening. All they do is chase down schools of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
And they direct, and they'll run them down and make them turn this way, make them turn that way, and you got 4 boats all around them.
That's harassing.
And if I run by them, the guy running the boat gives me the finger that I've scared the porpoise off that he's chasing down.
Yeah. Well, I'm just telling you that if you want NCWU and NCFA to work toward opening things September 1, we can do that. But just be aware of the price that you might pay, because if there's a certain threshold, and you don't have to kill them, you know, then the whole thing is shut down. So that's the reason for the September 1 opening in A and C. There's no turtles there. In the other areas, they're claiming that there are turtles until about the 15th or until the water's cooled down. But if you're saying there's no turtles there, let us know.
That's the thing, because the area I'm speaking of for the past 5 years, we haven't even been able to set a piece of largemouth net.
Yeah, you can still see if there's turtles around. I mean, there's ways to...
How do you know? If we don't set a piece of largemouth net and it's down there and you're fishing in 2 foot of water, the only way you're going to know if there's turtles there, you're going to catch them in a net. And there haven't been any nets there in 5 years. We've got fishermen right here that's fished down there their entire life. See no turtles down there. Just like I said, I've been fishing there all summer, drop net, I go down there and sit after dark. See no turtles.
When was the last count done?
Pardon?
When was the last count done?
I have no idea.
You can't, in regards to Endangered Species Act, guys, it's driving the bus. The Endangered Species Act is. We deal with it in eastern North Carolina. You deal with it with wolves, with a federal judge who shuts down coyote hunting, nighttime hunting. I mean, it's a reality, the Endangered Species Act. And Jerry can't discuss the suit that's going on, but there's a lot of information that's going to be coming to light, a lot of truth that's coming to light with this lawsuit in regards not to interactions between anybody in fishing and turtles, but between the fact that there are a tremendous amount more turtles than the federal government is acknowledging. You know, so we don't need to get, although it does make you want to, like, it makes your blood boil, and then you're like, well, that guy over there chasing the porpoises down, or that recreational guy catching the turtle on the hook and line, or it makes us want to really look away from the real issue. The real issue is that this is going to come to light. That information is going to see the light of day. Okay? Just stand by. Just wait. But in the meantime, all of us need to make sure that we're on the same page so that we can force this issue. He's beat boy Jacob down to the point where he's just like waiting for another hammer blow. Chris Batsavage, his boss, got a beating when he came here. Bill Cook's office writing a letter that was signed by representatives and senators about this whole joint enforcement issue is a hammer blow. Senators and representatives who call you to Raleigh to sit down to discuss this issue, to lay out the pay sheets, to lay out something that an attorney would absolutely have just a field day with the hard fact information of the fact that law enforcement officers who were doing a 13 to 17% observation coverage in the state with the last ITP, the individual take permit, or incidental take permit, for sea turtles. Now we can't get 4% coverage because the LEOs are told not to do it. The observers are told not to worry about where you're going, to lay back for a while. you know, all the particular issues, we got fishermen right here, of which I would love for y'all to volunteer when we wrap up to sit down and talk to Nicole. John, you, Curtis, different ones of you who have had some interaction, so that we've got it on video. There are people outside of the division, people that are interested in seeing this. They want to do the right thing. They don't want to be the one who is the death knell for fishermen, fishing families, fishing communities, jobs, tax base, school systems, all the rest of the things that we stand for. So let's not get too involved. Let's look for constructive ideas. I need to know how we can do it. Do we need to get a list? Do all the different areas need to come up with a list so that we have a list so we can call Albemarle Sound, Currituck Sound, Pamlico Sound, down near Jerry. Anybody, when it opens back up, how do we make sure that we get the observation coverage? And if we don't get the observation coverage, that we can document the fact that we were trying, that we were working towards getting it.
They don't want to do that. They want to call the ones that's convenient for them to call, that they know will take them anytime they call.
Let's use what they're requiring for us and document it.
Excuse me, Rick. I gotta leave. Do you mind if I just one more minute?
Come on.
There's one other thing I think it's really important to note. Of all the time that I spent in Raleigh, there were several offices that I went to every single day. Bill Cook's office was one. My senator was Norm Sanderson, was another. Representative Michael Speciale. Senator Tillman was there. I mean, I didn't always catch the senators there, but I made sure that Jordan saw me just in case there was a question or we needed to talk. I always made sure that Towers knew I was around, although he was a bit, you know, these guys are busy. And it's just a matter of letting them know you're there in case a question comes up. And, you know, the Fisheries Association does not endorse candidates. But I do want to let you know that there are some representatives and senators that work very hard. Now, if it was y'all talking to them, you'd get frustrated because they don't know as much about fishing as you do. Well, I'm ignorant anyway. I'm a dairy farmer, right? So I don't have that problem. So I can relate to that, and I try to see, you know, even when you're lobbying, one of the key things is not agreeing with your opposition, but understanding where they're coming from. Most of the time you can do that, for as absurd as it is, but sometimes there's just some issues you just have to scratch your head. I remember many years ago, one of the legislators thought that those spotter planes for Menhaden dropped nets on the school of Menhaden. I mean, I truly felt that way. But that's the kind of stuff that you gotta tell them, that you gotta let them know what the facts are. So I'm just telling you that there's legislators, and they aren't just from the coast. Some of these legislators don't want to study our issues, but will look, if they're in the Senate, they'll look to Bill Cook, or they'll look to Norm Sanderson for direction. In the House, they look to Michael Speciale, or if they're Democrats, they'll look to Paul Tyne. So, you know, it's really important, and I feel like we're still not doing a good enough job in educating our coastal legislators, because it's tough. And now between the short session and the long session, we need to do a much better job at that. Now, from NCFA's standpoint, I just acquired a 20-year-old RV. That 20-year-old RV is going to be parked in Raleigh next year. Because I gotta spend most of the time up there. That's just something that we have to do. So what's that going to mean? That's going to mean we need somebody else to go to the council meetings, either Mid-Atlantic or South Atlantic or Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. So we're trying to figure out who we're going to hire to cover those meetings. We're looking at somebody else to do research for us. So, you know, it all takes money, but we got to do it. That's just the way it is. So, again, thanks a lot for your attention.
One thing there for you. You were saying just a minute ago, if we thought or felt like there was no turtles down there, you could open up that September 1st.
No, I didn't say that. I said, let me know and I'll run that by.
Okay, well, let's skip get to the 15th and assume they don't shut us down on the 18th. Why wouldn't we get December this year, being we've been shut down for 4 or 5 months?
Well, that's something we need to talk about.
In other words, you got us on the drum, which I like to catch, to where we got to have certain species for bycatch. Well, I'd like to be able to have my flounders in December so I can pack my drum. Wouldn't that help things out along? And if it's for reduction, they've had a pretty good reduction this summer.
Yeah, without a doubt. This summer especially. So, again, thanks a lot, Britton. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
thank you, Jimmy.
I got one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead. And then guys, we're going to kind of try to wrap up with just a couple more things. I'm sorry that it's so late, but like I said, just educating yourself on where we are. Mikey? Yeah, would you like to come up here and address? You were the one who made a couple of the motions that we got and talked about some of the issues. You're our Marine Fisheries Commissioner.
I can make it out right. Listen, I thank y'all for coming. You know, this is exciting. You know, I sit there by myself and you can take a whipping every time. And I even sometimes I hate to go, you know, but somebody's got to go. You know, the legislators, what they did, the first thing we got there was they got the letter out, and they were shook up. They brought the letter out of what Cook had wrote, them letters, and what they done. They didn't like it at all. And the first thing we voted on, remember, was what they voted on was the legislators had passed last Friday, they passed a bill to slow down all the rules that the Marine Fisheries Commission was making. You know what their first motion was? Their first motion was, let's write a letter to the governor. We're going to vote. We're going to send a letter to the governor to sign this bill. The first thing that we voted on. So, you know, the legislators, things are changing. And this is what it takes if y'all come here. We've got a meeting. The meeting will be on 19th, 20th, and 21st at Kitty Hawk. What are we going to do? What do we want to do there? What laws do we want to vote on? We need to be working. What you guys? What is the most important, crucial thing that we need right now? Joe says we need the flounders to be open for December. Last year they closed it. Remember?
They closed.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say. We haven't had to vote. It's 5-4 every time. But you know what? When you go to there, when you people show up, and you stand up and testify, and you talk, you know what they do? You quieten them guys down. She quietened them down. I thank you for coming. I thank you for sitting in there. She's a brave lady. Sitting in there with all of them looking at her. When she was checking in at the hotel there, Chuck Lockridge said, "Are you going to film, huh? Can I get your autograph?" I said, "Yes, sir, you can get my autograph." Is that true? Exactly. Thank you. Listen, this is what it takes. Guys, we gotta battle. We gotta win it. We need you. I thought, you know, every year for the last 2 years, Britt and I, we've got a group of fishermen. We've donated shrimp, and we went to Raleigh, and we cooked for all the legislators. We need you there with us. We did it ourselves. We cooked clam chowder, and what we do, and it's move around, telling them what we do. You're not going to get anybody to represent you no better than you can. You're a good talker. You're doing a good job. You need to be one-on-one. Show them your nets. This is what we want to do. This is where we want to go. We got to have you. I can't do it by myself. I'm not a. You know, I was so glad when the division, when they changed the North Carolina Fisheries Association. You know what I thought they were doing? You know what? You know, I have trawlers. You know what I thought they were doing? They were representing trawlers. I saw what was going on. I said, a crabber, a gill netter is just as important as a dragger. And that's what we got to be. What affects you is eventually going to come get me. And that's what we got to do. And I don't, you know what? I talked to the, I think it's the guy up there, the assistant secretary to the deaner. And I said, you know what beat the game fish bill? You know who did it? He said, who? We did it all. I said, no, you didn't do it. I said, God did it.
Yeah.
God did it. You know, if we want things to change in here, we're going to have to pray. We're going to have to talk to God. I can't do it. We don't have any money. You know that. So what do we got? We got to get God. God, we need your help. You tell us. Have favor on it. We need favor. Favor is a wonderful thing. And that's what we got to have. And I thank y'all for coming. You've driven a long ways, and I thank you for coming, but we got a long ways to go. Should we? I'm willing to take fish. I'm willing to have a fish fry over to the Garden Inn. Do we need to do that? What do we need to do? That's what we need to do. We need to say, God, how do we handle this next meeting? What is the most important thing that we ask for, Joe? I don't know. That's why it takes all of us working together to come up with solutions that we can revive marine fisheries. I'm not happy with the people in there. They run a man off there. Alan Powell was a gentleman. They bullied him. They bullied him every meeting, talked bad to him. And he finally said, I can't take no more, Mike. I ain't going to do it no more. He's 74 years old. What a joke. That the marine fisheries has got something there, and they bully this man to resign. That's what happened.
And he was a scientist.
He was a scientist. He was, you know what? He was our fourth vote. He voted with a commercial. They got a guy now that reappointed a new person. He comes from the wildlife. He works for the Wildlife Resources Commission. He works for them. That's the new thing. So,
U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So that's what we got. So we don't have a very good and Bradley Stein was probably the best commissioner we had. They removed him 2 years ago, and because they said he wouldn't get rid of everybody. Guess what they did? They I think you can't think of his name. He's going through my mind, but
Joe Shutes.
Joe Shutes. They reappointed him and took Bradley off there after he'd been on there 10 years. But so you see what's going on. Again, like I say, pray for us. You know, we need wisdom, Holy Ghost wisdom, wisdom from God, not what we think, what's best for us, and that's what you know. And I look forward to seeing y'all at the meeting in Kitty Hawk. We got a lot of days ahead of us. Let's start planning to do what we can do. Okay? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just one more thing I want to say. Since I've joined, I mean, I've only been this is something I never saw myself as doing. I was always a fisherman, just kind of sit back and let everything happen, and just kind of always wanted him to say, well, that'll never happen. You know, it'll never be taken away, but kind of got to the point where it's not like that anymore. I realize now that it's possible for it all to be taken away.
Amen.
Totally possible.
That is what the objective is.
That's what the goal is.
By a lot of them.
Their total 100% goals taken away from us, 100%.
Can the North Carolina Watermen's Association or United, can they like make a list of all these people that we need to contact? 'Cause I think a lot of these fishermen are so busy that they're not even going to go through the trouble of even looking up the phone numbers. So if we had a list of all these people that we could call, we'd have a lot more people calling.
List of observers and their numbers.
I mean, if you could somehow get that out there, I think that would help a lot.
We have a list, and we're going to be in the process of hopefully updating our website so that all of the information that we write, you can click on it and see it. But we send out, with everything that we do, we send out to all of our members, we send out a list. This is the meeting, this is our point, this is the position, this is what's happening, this is the result, this is all of that. And we try to make it as absolutely simple as possible for people to get that information. It's not really complicated, but now, until we redo our website, you've either got to receive it, ask for it so we can send it to you. Lord only knows how many thousands of dollars a year we spend on hard copies. We send electronic versions, and we can send it to you. And if you don't want to get it, we can send a hard copy. But we're going to get our website redone so that you can click on it like you do a lot of things. You go to boom, you click, and bam, there's the position.
How many active members do you have right now?
I don't have a clue. But I would like for every one of y'all, if you're interested and concerned about what's going on and what you're doing, the Fisheries Association and Jerry Shield, that's our membership director, Kathy, back there. But Jerry Shield, if you search out, if you're not selling to a fish house who gives a 0.5%, you know, everybody gets beat over the head with money, but we're getting killed by money. We're getting killed by special interest money. The most important thing to a legislator, more important than a dollar bill, is a vote. Because without the vote, they don't get elected. And there's obviously a concern and a desire with the people who want to get elected. Two of them have been in here tonight. Maddie's one and Stan was another, that are looking to run in our local elections. And they're interested enough to be here tonight to listen to this meeting that's dragged on forever, about us trying to get our head wrapped around what we need to do, where we need to go. And your membership dollar, whether it's the Fisheries Association or whether it's a dollar with us, it helps them. We have two paid positions. We have Kathy, who's our membership director, and then Melba, who's our executive. And those two drag all over this state, every which way. They write things, they get involved in things, they do a lot of things. But there has never been a time that I have been involved in politics that fishermen have stood to gain. And there's a couple of different things that happen. This whole foods movement of people being concerned about what they eat. Your average consumer who lives 400 miles from you is more concerned about the stuff that they put in their body right now than ever in history. And they're looking it up, and they've got a phone, and they look it up, and this whole catch movement with fish is one of the reasons Farm Bureau took us up. Because seafood is the #1 selling commodity at these farm, what are they? Farmers markets. And farmers, it's the #1 commodity. They can't get enough of it. They've got plenty of peppers and radishes and cucumbers and lettuce and, you know, whole milk, unpasteurized milk, all of it. They can't get enough seafood. And the second thing,
There's Wally sitting there. Who pays for that commercial that's put all over the local television here about fresh local catch?
what do you mean about the Outer Banks catch?
That's right. Who
The
pays for that?
NCWU was instrumental in starting that.
Well, apparently the county's behind us
And-
somewhat. They want to benefit from our product.
And they sure enough do. And the other thing, guys, that is going to position you in a position of power is that these videos that Nicole is doing, this active documentary of you and your story, people are interested. People used to never come to Juan Cheese. 25 years ago, you didn't see, if you saw a Pennsylvania license plate in Juan Cheese, they were lost. You just go ahead and flag them down and say, you got to go back that way, where you came in here. Now, you drive around Juan Cheese today, and chances are that you're going to see more out-of-state license plates than you are in-state. People are looking for, they're looking for your story. They're looking to find out what you're all about. They're coming here for the color. They're not coming here to see the people that, you know, they came from Lord only knows where, Western New York, and they didn't come down here to look at the people next to them who lived one community over. They're searching people out. They're looking for things. You know, they want to be involved. And they're looking for people like y'all to sit there and talk to them just like we're talking right now in lucid conversations, and every one of you is intelligent and you can tell them about what you do. And she's going to catapult herself and these films that she's taken and this information, she's going to catapult off of that crowd down here shooting that wicked tune. And that is, what was it? 170 million people that looked at that thing Sunday night around the world. And I can't tell them on television how passionate I am. I mean, they've heard me get rung up about it, but you're going to hear some stuff on it. But I tell you one thing that I can do for you. Every opportunity outside of the opportunities they give me right there, every opportunity, I will be the one standing there that wants to have the CCA symbol with a rifle scope outlining it on it. And that's how passionate I am about y'all and what you do. That's how passionate I am about this foolishness of this observer program. The fact that we've got an ITP for sturgeons and the state is in the process of doing a fisheries management plan on it today. And rather than wait for the fisheries management plan to be up to find out exactly where we are, we've got an ITP which is going to require observers and is going to require restriction. We've got turtles that instead of the state was in the driver's seat and could have said, you know what, give us an idea where we need to be. We'll formulate the ITP. We pushed Lewis for over a year not to let the ITP lapse. Lewis, have the ITP. Have it sitting there. Have it ready so that when they threw the one in the trash, they slid the new one there. You were involved. You worked on it. You were in a process of getting an ITP that would give us the most takes, would give us the most leverage for fishing. It didn't happen. It lapsed. And then when the ITP was turned in, they said it was totally insufficient. Then the ITP was withdrawn. At that particular point in time, the special interest had Gene Beasley and the Karen Beasley Turtle Foundation sitting there on standby and had convinced her that without this ITP that all of us were killing millions and millions of sea turtles. That you could walk down the shore and never touch sand walking on the shells. And at that point in time, she filed an injunction. And that's where we are. But you know what? All that, guys, and what's happened up until now is history. 5 minutes ago is history. In your personal life, in your corporate life, 5 minutes ago is history. So where do we go now? How do we do it? Do we come up with lists? I think that we need to have lists. I think that we need to pound these people about the observations. I think we need to document our phone calls. I think we need to document what we do. I think that the NCWU has a guy this year who's doing an internship. We've gotten him going around filming people fishing. Filming. You can't deny it. You can't deny the truth that comes from that. And that's what we need to do. And we need to work. And I'll tell you how effective it was, is that during the meeting, I got a text from Lewis. That in and unto itself is huge. Where do we need to go? What are you looking for? And I said, you know what we're looking for? It's all right there in that sheet. It's great trout. It's speckled trout. It's flounder. It's, you name it, it's all of that. We submitted something about the black drum plant. It has to do with turtles. It has to do with observers. It has to do with everything. They said, are you guys going to be comfortable with 7 drums? We had asked for 5. The special interest that sits in marine fisheries was going to ask for 3 max. He said, could you live with 7 if we gave you bluefish and ding dong, ding dong. If we gave you bluefish and black drum, can you live with 7? A September 1st opening, we removed the soak time restrictions, and we can't, and I wish that I had gotten Andrew or some of y'all who have fished down there.
They're also gonna get mullet too.
And mullets and flounders.
Yeah.
But can you live with the 15th of September opening in the rest of the sound? I said, I can't speak for that. I don't fish there, have never fished there. Les has fished there, he's fished there. Any number of y'all have fished down there. You know, the guys down south, you know, they need to fish. They've been wholly solely cut off from fishing. You know, we need to address the gray trout. ASMFC is taking that up. Now this is Lewis talking when he called me today. We need to address the gray trout. I think y'all are entirely correct. I think commercial fishermen and I think the recreational fishermen need more gray trout. I think that we need to discuss large coastal sharks. We used to have a viable shark fishery. I mean, the discussion went on, and it was odd that he wasn't beating me over the head with what we had asked for. He was like, what's y'all's opinion? Where do you think we need to go? Something has changed, and it's y'all. It's because you've been calling, you've been meeting. It's because you're willing to come here. Some of you I've never seen in a meeting ever. But you're willing to get involved. And if you're not involved and you're not willing, then you've lost. And when y'all lose, that makes me a loser.
Patty has a comment.
Go ahead, Maddie.
In the past, you've used the Seafood Festival as a platform for educating people about the plight of the fishermen. Will you be planning to do that this year?
Kathy can answer you that. There's not a fisherman on the entire board. The NCWU was instrumental working with the county to get the Seafood Festival done, and there's not a person that sits on the board that's a fisherman. Last year we were down in the armpit of the whole place in the, like, Never Land.
Back 40.
Yeah, in the back 40.
Lord.
So I don't know, you know, in regards to that. But if anybody has any questions or anything, John, would you be willing to put your story with Nicole?
Sure.
Curtis, I think that you had a story that you would like to give to Nicole.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else who has something that they need to say, any kind of interaction, any kind of conversation, please take a moment to sit with Nicole so that she can get it on video. And she will, I'm telling you, she will make you look good. You'll be like, that's me. When she gets it all put together. And I thank y'all. I'm sorry it dragged on so long. You know, but we do have some issues, but I'm an eternal optimist. I don't know sometimes whether that flicker I see down the end is the train coming to me or whether it's the light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm an eternal optimist about it because I still very strongly feel that it is a noble job that we do. There's very few people who feed people, and there ain't but one other one, and that's the farmer. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
I've commercial fished for 30 years. This is the first time I've ever asked questions, called people in charge, ask questions they can't answer. And recently, since all this has taken place, if they want to stick the Marine Patrol officers after me to try to write me tickets for things I haven't done, let them come. I'm not breaking the law. It's a full force from everything I hear. People I've had to tell me that I better stop doing what I'm doing. I'm not even breaking the law of what I'm doing. And all this has happened in the past 2 weeks just because of me calling people that's in charge of things and asking questions, and all they want to do is discredit me because I put them into place and they can't answer any questions. It's not right. If they can't provide the answers, then they should never put the information out there to start with. 30 years, I've never had one citation. And then all of a sudden, everywhere I go, there they are.
And I want to give y'all all one more piece of advice too, guys. You see this? Andrew, I beat him over the head. I shamed him into getting on our board. That's how strongly the NCW feels about it. We've got longliners, drop netters. We've got now a man who makes a full-time living in the Sound. If you make a phone call or you have an interaction with an observer, with an enforcement officer, whatever, you write it all down. You get your name, you get the number, you get the time, you get the date, you document it, you write it down. And you get it to one of us. Good, bad, or ugly. And do not be confrontational. And what he's telling you is the truth, because he's going to get in his truck and he's going to go walk into the division office and he's going to sit down and say, okay, so what exactly can I or can I not do? And when they look at a map up there and he says, well, this map that I got right here is different than that map right there, so what's the difference here and what does it mean and what can I do, what can I not do? To the point where the division officer finally, you know, throws his hands up in the air and storms out, and he's standing there looking around like, I still didn't get my question answered.
I got one more thing to say and I'll be done. Just like happened last year and it's going to happen this year. The line they've got that's closing Pamlico Sound leaves the center of Oregon Inlet Bridge and runs to Point Peter Road. The south boundary of the Albemarle Management Area leaves the north point of Eagle Nest Bay and runs 1 mile north of Point Peter Road.
Well, that's like 2 miles.
Those lines intersect in the Sound. The proclamation last year said you cannot set south of the Albemarle Management Area. Then they've got another line 1.5 miles north. They're saying you can't set south of that line.
Yeah,
well, those two lines cross.
Yeah,
how can you abide by that law? And I went to the office and demanded a map to see that line that left the center of Oregon Inlet Bridge. And an officer jumped all over me and said, we don't have a map that shows that line. That line closed half of the state of North Carolina. And they couldn't provide me a map for that. They don't have no more clue what's going on than we do.
You can't have 2 lines at all. That's chaos.
Guys, don't take time. John, you want to go ahead and